Welcome to URG's last session of our virtual webinar training series. My name is Amanda Morrison, and we also have Kristen Alexander over here. We are URG's Member Relations Specialist. Today we have Dan Snyder presenting on developing people. Just a little bit about Dan. He graduated in 1988 with a BA in Economics and Management from Beloit College in Beloit, Wisconsin. He was a 4-year letter winner of football team and finished out his career there as a multi-all-conference offensive lineman and an All-American nominee for his senior year. Dan also held the position of Sergeant of Arms, Treasurer, and finally President of Alpha Zeta Chapter Sigma Chi fraternity. Upon graduation, Dan and his father, Ralph, bought 10 acres of plowed field and built the first building of what would become a family business. A short 3 months later, on August 10th, 1988, Snyder Salvage opened for business. Since that time, Snyder Salvage has grown with a new name, Snyder Certified Auto and Truck Parts, to a 37-acre state-of-the-art recycling facility. Snyder's now has around 50 employees at the location, and you have more than that, don't you?
Yes.
You have a lot more than that.
Bio is.
Yeah, uses a lot of delivery routes around Central Texas. In 2007, Dan and his two brothers, Andy and Travis, started a new company and entered into a self-service recycling business with Greenfield location in Belton, Texas. Since then, the three brothers opened 2 other wrench-apart locations in Austin, Texas in 2010 and Lubbock, Texas in 2014. The original full-service facility and 3 self-service facilities employ about 150 employees. There we go. Dan was a recent URG board member. Even though work consumes a lot of Dan's time, he has a wife and still found time to raise 2 fantastic children, Alyssa and Barrett. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar presentation, and I'll hand it over to you, Dan.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm wondering about that bio. That is, maybe that got slid in there just to make me feel a little bit younger. That's quite an old one at this time.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Let's get a new one.
Yeah, so now it is 60 acres of full service,
Wow.
6 locations, and approaching 300 employees total. So multiple locations of self-serve, 1 used car lot, and then the original first full-serve location where we're at now. So I am, for those of you guys that haven't met me before, and probably most of the people on here have somewhere along the way, I'll be the big, ugly, redheaded guy running around the conference with a flat top. Probably the only one there with a red flat top. So not hard to pick out. I'm usually, I'll stress that, I'm usually not nearly as harmful as you might think. So feel free to come and talk to me at any time. I don't have very many friends, so it's really nice to talk to different people. I am the general manager of the full serve location still, although it's grown quite a bit to the point where I don't do a ton with the day-to-day, moment-to-moment operations. And that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about and why I think that that I might be able to impart some wisdom on you guys on developing people. We've had some pretty good success with that through the years. Currently at this location, I've got, I believe it is 7 department managers that oversee the operations. I have an operations manager as well, newly minted operations manager, and we have right at 100 employees at this location. So we're going to talk a little bit about developing people. As an example, all these managers that I just mentioned, I believe only one of those managers was actually a professional manager that came to me. And that's my sales manager, Kevin Crowley. He was in the new car dealership world out in West Texas, small new car dealerships. And he moved to Central Texas to take care of his mother-in-law. And as a result, he fell into our lap, and it's been a great addition to the team. But all the rest of them are people who started at essentially entry-level or ground-level type positions here at our facility. And what I've done with them is I've helped identify who they were and maybe the possibilities that they've had, ran them through sort of a testing process, figured out if they were able to be somebody that we wanted to put more and more time and effort into them, promoted them, and eventually and still now protect them. Now, some of those guys are even part of the way through that process at this point. My newly minted operations manager, some of you guys may know, it's Jeremy Barnett, and he started here a little over 10 years ago as a temp through a temp agency as a dismantler. And so 10 years, he's moved a long way, been through lots of positions, done well at all of them. And as a result, he's in that number 2 position. So initially, when you're looking for somebody, there's a couple of things that I sort of want to look at. I want to look at personality traits and behaviors. What do these folks do in their normal day-to-day activities? And try to find things that are, what you might call a go, no-go gauge, or can't do without, must-haves, whatever you want to call them. There's a couple of those things that I think are really, really important. The 2 things that I would say are deal breakers are honesty and selflessness. From an honesty standpoint, your leaders, and that's what I will address them at mostly, as leaders as opposed to managers, even though it's my management team and so on. Really what I want them to do is I want them to lead. And a lot of times it's lead by example, but leaders have to have the respect of the people that are not only under them, but around them. And if they don't have that respect, they can't be effective leaders. So it's really important that they're honest. You don't even want to tell lies about little things. Wants to be very straightforward. Tell the truth no matter what. Sometimes it's better to tell the truth and take the licking than it is to lie about it and usually get caught and take the licking later anyhow. The second part of that is selflessness. This is an important trait that is sort of a must-have as far as I'm concerned, because the leaders in my organization need to put the company and the people that they're leading ahead of their own, what's the right word? Their own benefit, I guess you might say. And so they've got to be selfless when it comes to that. So when they first get here and they're, say, working as a dismantler or a parts puller or a salesperson or whatever it is, they need to be making decisions that are the best thing for the company, or if they're a salesperson, the best thing for the customer. And never get on a salesperson for taking good care of a customer if the reason that they have for doing it makes sense. Some behaviors that you want to look for, or at least that I want to look for in these same people. A proclivity to follow rules. Proclivity, what does that mean? That means that they like to follow rules or that they do follow rules. I personally think that that's an important trait. I live in a house full of rule followers for the most part. We're relatively independent, but it's always been something we've kidded our kids about. And my wife and I tend to be that way as well. If there's rules that are out there that are put in place, they're usually put in place for a reason and we follow them. Now, we're not talking about speeding laws here because I don't tend to follow those as much as I should. But for the most part, especially around the business, these rules would be processes and procedures, things that you have in place that need to be followed so that the end product and the customer get taken care of the way that they need to be. We want to look for a desire to learn more. Where does that come from? Usually that is something that is inherent in a person, usually from their upbringing. It can be taught, but it's usually already there when somebody gets here. And it doesn't mean that they have a great formal education or anything like that, but it's a lot like a work ethic. Work ethic is usually something that is instilled in you when you're raised by your parents. This is the way we do things. This is not the way we do things. And that sort of comes along with this desire or this interest in learning more about what's going on. So if you've got a guy that is a 20-year-old, 18-year-old kid that comes in, maybe he starts as a dockhand and then he gets promoted up to a parts puller or something like that. he wants to learn more about what's going on inside the business. And that usually will show that he has an interest in maybe remaining in that business for some time, or just this general idea that I want to have more knowledge so that I can be better at what I do. And what I found with a lot of some of these folks in the past is that these guys will come in early, stay late, or ask a lot of questions that are usually outside of their job description. They're a parts puller. They're paid to go get parts, bring parts in, and put them in a certain place and go do it all over again. And yet they keep asking about, well, if I put this thing here, wouldn't it be better if, such and such does this and that does that? Or maybe they stay late to help load the trucks in the evening, or to go through and organize the manifest or something along those lines. When somebody has that extra desire to learn more, that's a really good, positive behavior that you're looking for. The other thing that I think is really important is the pride in work. When they do something, they not only follow the rules, but they do it, and they do it right, and they typically will tend to do it to the nth degree. So, true story, 45 minutes ago, I have one of my dismantling managers in here, and he's about to give his 60-day review to a relatively new dismantler. And he's worried about how he's writing this review up, so he's asking me the questions about it, and he puts it in front of me. And it says something along the lines of, that you as the dismantler are doing exactly what we want, but when it comes to quality and detail, but you're just not turning out enough work. And so my pushback to him was, maybe not exactly what you want, but you're doing a great job at the quality and the detail, maybe too much, to the point to where you're not putting out enough production to get to the next level. In other words, you've got to be at a certain level of production in order to stay the next 30 days. When you get to that level, you got to be at a certain level there. The reason I bring this up is that young man, who is an Army veteran and now in the reserves, he has something in his brain which leads him to doing the job really well and really thoroughly. And when we're in these dismantling meetings, when I'm talking about quality control and that sort of thing, I see this young man with his head bobbing up and down in affirmation that he knows and understands and agrees with that kind of work. I can work with somebody like that. It's much more difficult to work with the guy that comes in and does tons of work but has no pride at all in what they do, and they don't care about the rules. They just want to blow through and get the money for the deal. So pride in work, important behavior.
Stephanie Williams says, "Amen. The way you were raised."
There's a lot to that. There is a lot to that, no doubt about it. My father and I started the business, and he is not involved in the day-to-day operations, but I go to lunch with him almost every day, and he's around, and he still oversees our construction jobs, and we buy a new piece of property and those kind of things. And he's still that way. He's going to be 76 years old here next month. And he still gets up every day, even with 2 long pieces of titanium in his back where he broke his back. But that's what he's all about, is work, 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 and do it right. Those kind of things are really important. And that's the way me and my brothers and my sister were raised, sisters. And as a result, I'm blessed to have most of them involved in the businesses, and it kind of gives a good culture of doing that throughout the organization. So once you kind of identify somebody that has some of these personality traits and these things that you like, and you start to see, and sometimes they'll be little. They're not, a guy standing there with a neon sign that says, "Look at me, I'm wonderful." It's the little things that as you're walking through the business that you look at, you look at their dismantling bay, and it's just a little bit nicer than the rest of them, where he's, like this 60-day review story I just told. Just little things like that pop up that start to give you an indication of who these potential candidates are for growing inside of your business. Once you've sort of identified who those candidates are, the next step is to sort of test them. And when you test these candidates, the things that you want to try to do is you want to make sure that you keep, you're not going to put a paper in front of them. You want them to continue to do their regular daily activities, dismantle. You still have to get whatever it is, 9 cars dismantled a week or whatever your number is. But on top of that, you grab them off to the side and say, hey, man, you're really good at X. And I have this little project over here that I'd like to get a little bit of help on, and I think you'd be good at this. Would you mind helping me out? Inevitably, what they'll say is, yeah, I'd love to, whatever. And so what you do is you put some increased responsibilities of some kind on them. It can be something as simple as, hey, man, I want you to learn how to run the loader so that you can unload the car haulers when you come in. You think you can handle that? Yeah, I'd be glad to. Well, now listen, you're going to do that for me. And, there's going to be 1 or 2 car haulers that come in a day. I still need you to get these 9 cars in dismantling. You think you can do that? Yeah, I think I can do that. So you want to kind of set those expectations, but you want to make this basically what you're doing. If you want to look at a visual analogy, is you are stacking weight onto their shoulders, little by little, not big 45-pound plates, but 5 or 10-pound plates at a time. And they don't even really realize right off the bat of what you're doing, but you're putting this extra responsibility on there. And what you want to try to figure out and what you want to watch for is what is their reaction to this additional workload that they've got. That's going to be really important. What you're going to find is that there's going to be some reactions. What I found is about 3 different reactions. The first one's going to be after the first week or 2, or maybe 3 of that increased responsibility, that they get frustrated, lash out, start to talk to people around them like, I can't believe they're making me do all this stuff. It's crazy. They want me to do all this extra work and in the same amount of time, blah, 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 whatever all of that is. And if that's the reaction that you get, you probably have the wrong guy or girl for this candidate school or whatever you want to call it, trying to grow these people. Because what you're going to end up with is throughout this process, you're going to be doing just that. You're going to be growing their responsibility, giving them an opportunity to put more weight on their shoulders, and then you're going to figure out ways to make them carry even more and more and more. And it's up to them to come up with one of the 2 ways that I think are acceptable at handling that extra weight. The first one, which I think is the most common, is what I found. And that is, what you find is that guy will show up earlier, stay later. He's going to do whatever he possibly can, or her, going to do whatever she possibly can to do what you've asked them to do, because they don't want to disappoint the boss. They're going to put their nose down. They're going to work that much harder. They may even work so hard at it that their quality of the work may slip a little bit, but they're going to get it done. They're not going to disappoint Dan. They're not going to disappoint you, whoever you may be. They want to make sure that they get that done. And that's what I found to be the most normal result. The other result that's even the best one, but this is pretty rare when it occurs, Jeremy, who I mentioned earlier, is this kind of a guy. And if you got one of these, you've got one that's probably even better. And that is the guy that takes on the extra responsibility, shoulders it, starts working harder and harder in order to not disappoint the boss and make sure that he gets everything done, but realizes in relatively short order that all this stuff can't be done the way that we're doing it now and still get it done in the same time period, 40 hours or whatever it may be. So what do they start doing? They start looking for a better way, a more efficient way to do this. And when I talk about this, I usually talk about the way that it happens to me, and that is lay down my head at night at 8 o'clock, and at midnight my eyes pop open, and I can't go back to sleep because I'm trying to figure out how we're going to get X done, and we're going to do it faster, more efficiently, better, whatever that may be. And if you have somebody that starts thinking in those terms, I think you really have a gem at that point, and this is really a good opportunity. The other one that I just mentioned, the guy that puts his head down and just keeps on going, he may may be able to go beyond that and may not. But that's where we start working now into what I call an intentional interaction. An intentional interaction between the mentor and the mentee, or the in this case, owner and the candidate, or manager and the candidate, whatever that relationship may be. Whoever is doing the developing to the person that's being developed. And what is an intentional interaction? It is just what it says. It is a schedule on your side, probably once a day, once a week maybe is not enough, but once a day, once every 2 days, an intentional get up out of your chair or get out of your area, wherever it may be, walk to where this person is working and operating, and casually, because they need to see it as a casual interaction, walk in and say, hey man, what's going on? How you doing? And initially what you'll probably get from that is going to be, oh, everything's fine, and then go back to work. What'll happen over a little bit of time, as you have this intentional interaction, you'll develop a relationship with that person, and they'll start to become more easy and more free with information. And possibly they may vent a little frustration, or they may say, man, I'm working really hard trying to get this, all these transports unloaded and hit that 9-car minimum, but I'm running out of gas. I've got that. I end up having to go out here, and the loader itself won't start half the time, and this, that, and the other thing, and they'll come across these things. This is the opportunity for them to let you know what it is that they are bumping up against. And a lot of times, if you're dealing with somebody that's 18, 20, 22, 30 years old, whatever it may be, and especially if they're relatively new to the business, this may be a challenge that they've never come across before. They've never been in a position to shoulder this sort of responsibility, or to try to figure out how these things go. And if they're not a natural problem solver, this is an opportunity for you as the mentor to be able to give them some suggestions on ways that they might be able to solve those problems. Suggest ways that they might be able to deal with the stress and this extra responsibilities. And then watch. Go away, come back a day or two later, have that intentional interaction. Again, from their side, it needs to look and feel as a relatively casual interaction. You don't want a formal sit down. This is your fourth evaluation of the week to find out how you're doing. It just needs to be a casual, from their perspective, stop by, check in, see how things are going. Here's some suggestions, see how that works out. And then you've got to figure out and sort of watch what happens with those suggestions. If the suggestions that you give are largely ignored, and they just keep on beating their head against the wall and really don't get around to solving those problems and getting more efficient at handling that extra weight on their shoulders, you probably have another off-ramp in the process here. It may be that this is as far as that person goes. You can work with them, a while longer. Don't do it after 1 week or 2 weeks. Make that determination. But over time, and I have a manager on my staff who's been with me a long time, and he's as good as it gets when it comes to loyal, knows the business inside and out. And he was in this position for 2+ years probably, of beating his head against the wall almost physically, because there was so much poured on him and so much stress on him in his department, and he did not have the education, and this doesn't need to be formal education necessarily, but he didn't have the education or the ability, or frankly the want, to get to the point where he can problem solve, carry that load, and move to the next level. These kinds of folks at this level, this is not a bad thing, because what you end up with here is a very good, what we call in our organization, a straw boss. A straw boss is a team leader is a platoon sergeant, those kinds of people who are loyal to the company, loyal to their people, the people around them, respect them, look up to them, think they're great, and yet that person knows the job that those people are doing better than anybody. He's probably really good at it himself, and he's a great leader at that level, but may not ever be a guy that can run an organization or be an owner or something along those lines, simply because he doesn't have or either the want or the skills to be able to go to that next level. Once you find somebody that does have those skills, he's got the right behavior traits, you've put extra time and effort into them, you've piled the weight onto their shoulders, and they continually figure out ways to unpile that weight, whether it be maybe onto other people's shoulders by delegating or by becoming more efficient to be able to get more and more done in the same time period. Whatever those things are, now you've got somebody that is really starting to get to that pinnacle of time and effort that you put in, and really has the capability of doing some even better things. At this point, what I like to do is get that person and get them to a point where you publicly promote them. Even in some cases, I might even make up a position and a title to promote them to. But at some point, they need some sort of public recognition to the time and effort that they've put in to trying to make themselves better. But if they're going to move from whatever that position is, somebody's going to have to fill that spot. Somebody's going to have to backfill into there. And now you have another opportunity to find out what the capabilities of this individual are when it comes to a really good management technique, which is to train people. So they've got to get their replacement trained so that they can move into that position and not miss a beat as far as the company itself goes. Now, when you promote somebody, there's some good things that can come out of that. There's also some bad things that can come out of that. There's much more risk that I've found in bad things than good things. That doesn't mean you don't want to promote, because that individual really deserves it, and they need that a little bit, maybe for, I hate to say ego, but at least to confirm the fact that all this effort that they're putting in is helping them climb that ladder. So when you promote them, you got to watch about how that candidate reacts. You also have to watch and see how the other people around them react. And the most dangerous thing that I've found is when you take somebody from a group of workers and you promote them vertically straight up, and now they become the boss, quote unquote, above those workers. What you end up with a lot of times is jealousy. You'll have somebody or more than one person in that group. These are folks that used to be maybe good friends, spend a lot of time together, barbecued on the weekends, went to the mud bogs together, whatever it was that they do. Now you got one guy that gets promoted up, and now there's other people that are like, well, why'd he get promoted? I do more cars per week than he does, or I pull more parts, or I sell more than he does. I should be the one that's getting promoted. And so you have to deal with that sort of a jealousy factor that goes on. And that can be really dangerous if you let that get out of hand. So it kind of goes back to that intentional interaction where you have to go around and talk, usually sort of a sidebar with those guys, and say, hey man, I understand where you're coming from. Give me a few minutes. Tell me what's going on. What are you upset about? Or what do you think that person needs to do to be better? One of the techniques that I do a lot of and work with when I'm developing new leaders is I poll the employees underneath them, sometimes around, but underneath them, and I get them in a group and I say, look, we want to grade this manager, new manager, seasoned manager, whatever it is. I want you to grade them based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll come up with a half a dozen or so questions. The grading scale that I always use is a 1, 2, or a 3. 1 is needs improvement, 2 is good, 3 is excellent. And then down at the bottom, if you've got any kind of comments whatsoever, feel free to put the comments down there. I will make sure that when I address them with the manager or leader, that they are anonymous. I'll make sure that if it's about a particular incident, that I will make it more generic to where they won't understand that it came from you. And by the way, when you turn this paper into me, it won't have a name on it. You just fold it in half, turn it in, and then I'll take that information. And I do that quite often to provide feedback to the new leader and even the seasoned leaders, because I want them to be what we call servant leaders. I want them to serve the people that are underneath them, not dominate the people that are underneath them. And that's one of the things that you have to be careful about when you promote somebody up. And a lot of this has to do with their emotional intelligence at the time, which can be more mature later on. It also has to do with how good of a job that I may have done, or whoever's doing the mentoring, how good of a job that we've done at getting them to that point. Because that new leader a lot of times will want to rule by force. I'm finally there. And that son of a gun in the bay next to where I used to work, he just won't keep his bay clean. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to fine him for every day that his bay is not clean, or I'm going to penalize him for this, or whatever those things are. And what does that do? Of course, that builds lots and lots of resentment, and that's the absolute opposite of what you want to do. So this grading system and this feedback system that works really well at giving something for that new manager, bringing them in, be able to sit down and go through those comments, go through the grades, and then regrading again 30 days later, 60 days later, that sort of thing, so that they can see improvement on their side as well. And you preach that servant leadership. When you go talk to one of your people, you should also do intentional interactions, but ask them, hey, what can I do to help you succeed? I want you to be a better part puller, a better salesperson, a better dismantler. What can I do from your perspective to help you succeed? The manager or leader, their job is to try to remove obstacles out of the way so the people that do the real work are able to do that work and do it well. Now, does that mean that you completely let them run roughshod? Absolutely not. Remember at the beginning, we talked about the proclivity to follow rules. Why? Because every job that we have has got a job description. We've got a process and a way to do things. And that manager or that leader, what they're there for is to make sure that we stay between the lines. We don't want to run off in the ditch somewhere. We stay between the lines when it comes to job descriptions, when it comes to processes and procedures, because that next department that's waiting to get the part handed off to them is expecting X. And you need to provide X, not Y or Z. And so there is some level, as I mentioned before, that person that you promoted really needs to live and die by that same thing. And they can easily go back and work with the people that are underneath them, and done the right way, they can keep them working and heading in the right direction. All right, the training thing I mentioned a little while ago, this is something that's really important. They've got to be able to train and train well. And I think this is a sort of a window into our own soul as mentors. If you train a person and train them well, they will learn to train people and train them well. And what you should start to see is a lot of the things that you do and the techniques that you use that this person has picked up on and used themselves. Now, I don't demand that. I was talking to Jeremy yesterday in our one-to-one, and one of the things that he does is he carries a spiral notebook around with him, and he writes stuff down. I've tried through the years legal pads, spiral notebooks, this, that, and the other thing. What I find is I always lay them down and walk away from them. But the only thing that I never walk away from is my phone. So I've gotten to the point, I've got an app on my phone that is essentially a to-do list. It's called Todoist, and I found that I like the way that it operates. So I don't demand that somebody does the same thing that I do, but they better have something that will help them keep up with all of the different responsibilities and the different things that will constantly bombard you the higher that you go up the ladder. Now, once you get somebody to this point, you have got what we might call a good employee, quote unquote, good employee. I kind of, in an article that I wrote for one of the magazines here this month, it goes along this same lines, and it starts off and talks about, standing around at a conference. You're in the local bar there or whatever it is, everybody's having a drink, and everybody's lamenting that there's no good people out there. I can't find any good people. And you wonder, and you start to go, well, you've been in business for how long? 25 years. Has the good person, that one perfectly described, whoever it is that you're looking for, have they ever walked through the door and said, here I am, hire me? Probably most people are going to say, no, that guy never comes along, probably doesn't even exist, never comes along. I might push back a little bit on that and say they do exist, but very rarely, if ever, are they going to walk through your door. You've heard the adage, the good employees all have a job. And that's, for the most part, pretty good. Sometimes you can catch somebody that's moving into your area for some reason and walks in the door. But most of the time, the point that I'm trying to make is that you can't just sit there and wait and expect for good people to walk in the door and to be your savior for your business. It's not going to happen. And what will happen, inevitably, if you're lucky, is you're going to be in a position similar to what I am now after 32 years or so in the business, is that you go from a young kid to a middle age to now getting to be one of the more seasoned people around the industry. And guess what? Now I'm starting to look at, 30 years behind me, that seems like that went by pretty quick. 30 years in front of me, I'm going to be an old man. And so this process that we're talking about, it takes a really long time, and it takes a focused energy and effort in order to build these people. We've been blessed. We have had some people that have come in, or we've hired from different places, no doubt about it, but we don't have nearly enough of them to fill up the places that we need at 6 different locations. There's always a need for good quality people, so you need to be looking for them. And inevitably, there are good people almost every day or every week or every month that you're hiring. Some of them come in and leave. Why do they leave? Maybe we haven't identified them quick enough. Once you identify these folks, though, you've trained them, you've got somebody that is a good person, guess what? Everybody else on this call wants that good person, and everybody else in the industry or in another industry. Because once somebody is trained at this level, they can work and be successful, not in just the used auto parts industry. They could go someplace else and be successful in another industry. They have the skills, the life skills, the business skills to be able to be successful and to go in and learn and in wherever they want to go. So now it becomes really important that you take this candidate and you protect them. How do you do that? Lots of different ways to do that. One of the things that I have up on the screen here, go above and beyond to create loyalty. And this doesn't start just at this level. This starts even at the lowest levels with little things. So one of the things that I tell my people, whenever it comes up, is when I buy a car and it comes in, I bought that car and everything in it. Everything in there, every last nut and bolt belongs to me. However, if you find something in that car that you want, ask me for it. I may give it to you. I may charge you a little bit for it. I may charge you a lot for it, or I may say, no, I can't sell it to you. I want it. And in about 99% of the cases, you know what they come up with? A stuffed animal, right? A 40-year-old set of golf clubs, a soccer ball that's flat. whatever these things are. And so virtually all the time you give it to them. Hey man, take that thing, get it out of here, enjoy it, hope you like it, whatever it may be, give it to your kid, whatever. Sometimes it's something different. Sometimes it is, hey, this 2010 F-150 just rolled in, it's hitting the tail. My 76 AMC Pacer out here is on its last legs. I'd like to buy that truck. Well, there's a lot of parts there, blah, blah, blah. But maybe what you do is go a little bit above and beyond for those good folks that have shown their loyalty to you, and you want to reinforce that by helping them. I hesitate to say this because I know my brothers beat me over the head, and my sister does as well. But a lot of times, though, not a lot, sometimes people will come to you and say, man, I'm in a financial pinch. I need to borrow some money. And we'll set up some sort of a deal where they can borrow some money and pay it back and so on. I even had a situation the last couple of years where a guy needed $1,000. And he was a long-term employee, was in a pinch, was trying to buy a house, needed this, that, and the other thing. And he already had a loan out through the business. And my sister, who's our CFO, is nuts about rules, and we can't do a second loan because of that. And I just gave him $1,000. I gave him $1,000 cash. Now I'll tell you, guess what? It's been a year and a half, and I haven't seen the $1,000 back. Now I remember that, but you know what? As a guy that's been with me for probably 15 or 20 years, I figure if I never get it back, he probably earned it somewhere along the way. So I'm not too worried about it. But those kinds of things that we as owners or managers can do in an effort to build loyalty are really important. Those are the first few steps. Beyond that, when you start getting a little bit older, if you don't have a succession plan inside of your business, anybody tried to sell a wrecking yard lately? There's not really a demand for wrecking yards necessarily out there. Not just everybody wants to jump into a business that, you can spend millions of dollars on and make almost nothing, right? It's just not something that has a lot of people looking for to run it. So you may think about possible ownership for those key employees as you get older. Maybe they can start to buy some of the stock from you, maybe phantom stock, or a way to have those guys involved in the business from a financial standpoint. Maybe it's a bonus based on revenues or profits or something along those lines. Or maybe a SERP, supplemental employee retirement plan. Some sort of a way to reward those good quality candidates for time and effort that they put in through the years. Because now at 53 years old that I'm at right now, my operation here runs almost 24 hours a day. And if something happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody calls me. It doesn't happen. And yet there's been situations where I've came in at 6 the next morning, something happened at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have 2 or 3, sometimes more, managers that were aware of what went on that night before, and there was something that was needed, and they get out of bed and they drive 20, 30, 45 minutes, whatever it is, to be there to make sure that those trucks are loaded and they went out on time. That kind of loyalty is built by what this process is that I've explained to you. So hopefully you'll be able to do something along the same lines, whether you use it exactly the same way or something close to that, giving you some ideas maybe about the ways to go about doing that. But I really, really firmly believe after 30 some years in the business that the key to a consistent, well-run and respected business is not having it all come from one place, not from the top. It's got to be your people, the culture inside of your organization, and that business is built on people. So it's up to you to figure out how to develop those people. All right, that's all you get from me unless you've got some questions. And I'll be more than happy to answer those questions either in this format, or if you guys have questions you want to email me. I get God knows how many hundreds of emails a week, just like all the rest of you guys. So I would prefer not to do it that way. You're welcome to call me if you'd like. The only people that have my cell phone are my wife, my girlfriend, and everybody else in America. So you should be fine to call me on that if you'd like as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. That was such an awesome presentation, and I know I learned a lot. That's a pretty awesome gesture that you did for your employee, and that really shows how much you care about them and developing them as humans and making sure that they're successful, and you've really proven that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I don't see any questions or comments. If you want to drop any down below, we'll wait just another minute or so. But other than that, thank you so much, Dan, for doing this for us. This was the last one of the week, and I think it was one of the top ones, so you did awesome.
Thank you. You might want to, if you've got an alarm or something like that, you might want to run the alarm. Everybody's probably sleeping.
No, not at all. Definitely not. I don't think so. I learned a lot. I know I did.
Good.
All right. It looks like we're good to go. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you again, Dan.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. Look
Have a
forward to
great
seeing
day.
all of you guys at the next conference as soon as they get this coronavirus deal taken care of.
I know. Yes, exactly. All right. Have a good day.